Welcome back to Radio Entrepreneurs and our special show, In the Weeds. Walter Sullivan joining me in the studio.
We're having a great time. Now we're not in the weeds, we're into construction.
Good stuff. Our next guests up in the studio are Eamonn and Chris Tenaglia of Valiant America. Welcome, guys.
Thank you for having us on the show.
It's a pleasure to have you here. Why don't you tell our listeners a little bit of what you guys do? You're in the construction industry, but focused in the cannabis industry as well.
Absolutely. What we do is we focus in the marijuana grow facilities with obviously the dispensaries. We've been at it for quite a long time, even before it was probably 100% legal. So we were, for about 10 years now, we've been following the wave, watching the wave, learning from the wave that went up the west coast and is now heading down the east coast.
And I think probably creating the wave. It sounds like you guys are ahead of the curve to some degree. I don't want to say riding it. You've been,
We hope so. We didn't never want to say that just in case it gets a jinx on us.
Now, you're from the construction business.
Yes.
So I think what made you go from just doing construction to now focusing on cannabis as well?
It was pretty straightforward. Coming from Ireland, and you come to America, and you hear in the news that California and Colorado and these places are going to legalize marijuana. It makes you sit up and think straight away, and you're like, oh my God, what can I do in this industry? Because I'm not a grower, I don't know how to grow a tomato, but I do know building, and I do know that this is going to come. Talking to a few growers and stuff, that this comes with a lot of expertise, and I knew that was going to translate into the commercial building sector.
Well, and I think what's interesting is you see growers, processors, or retailers, they hire a construction company.
Correct.
But that construction company really doesn't understand this industry. And why don't you explain a little bit about the importance of hiring someone that truly understands, especially in the cultivation?
Okay. So we've come across this for years, and what happens is if you have a commercial construction background, it doesn't translate into commercial construction for marijuana, and a lot of people out there have failed, unfortunately. They've had to build their facility twice. Big part of the reason for that we can share with you guys is they're using all the wrong materials. We've been lucky that we've now developed a couple of books, as you will, one for products you use, one for products you do not use. And I can tell you that the one for products you do not use is about this thick, and the products for what you can use successfully to mitigate mold is about this size. And if it says it's mold resistant, it doesn't mean mold's not going to grow on it.
So because it's such a climatized, specialized environment, you really need, from the ground up, so to speak, building
Absolutely.
materials that are tolerant.
From north to south, it's totally different.
And it's amazing the cost, if you don't do it right, of losing a whole crop.
Unbelievable.
And the reputation you have.
Unbelievable. It's like whenever we first got into obviously there were smaller grow facilities, and then now they've grown to quite large facilities. They went from a few $1,000s per room to millions per turn. And whenever you're playing with that kind of stakes, you have to hit it right. You have to get it right the first time, because you don't want to do this again. And
once you get impacted by mold or whatever else, that's gone. And it takes you to recreate that turn again. You're doubling the process.
Oh, absolutely. And to clean the rooms up, everything, the vents, the drains, the walls are the easy part. Everything else after that, around the lights, the whole lot, that's where your nightmare comes in.
So I'd imagine a lot of clients, probably are in the early stages, they've got the capital, they've got the capability to get into the business, but they don't have the expertise to actually build the facility, and that's where you guys come in.
Yes.
Tried and true. How often are you called upon not only to augment design, but to spec materials? I mean, it sounds like that's one of the competitive advantages that you provide.
That's part of our job. Yeah. Like, we actually offer that straight off the bat, and you do get people coming into this industry with capital, but they don't realize, unfortunately, Massachusetts, you need probably twice what you think.
And that's really part of this industry. We only need $2 million. $7 million has grown into $15 million to $25 million.
Absolutely. And so we also bring in the bad news as well as the good news. We'll tell them, guys, that this is what we'll offer. Try and be as realistic with them as possible. A lot of people tell us to go away, only for 6 months later to tell us to come back. It is it's highly expensive industry to get into, especially in Massachusetts.
Well, without locking it down too specifically, but there's general rules of thumb. You want to build Class A office space, it's $150 a foot or whatever that number
Yes.
is. Are there general rules of thumbs that you can apply to the industry to say, a grow facility is going to cost you X thousand per square foot? Or
Absolutely. What we're seeing at the minute is between 180 to 300.
Okay.
It gets you something in the ballpark, but people are building well over in excess of that as well.
Now, one of the things that the law talks about is being environmental friendly. How are you dealing with the issue of, because the biggest cost in New England is energy.
Yes.
How are you dealing with the energy issue?
Okay, so now we're looking at alternative methods, like cogen units. I think Chris can talk more about the cogen units than I can.
Okay, so some of the units that we're using is either it's called a CHP unit or it's a chiller unit, where you take a massive V8 engine and they adjust the carburetor and put natural gas into it, and that ends up using a lot less electricity because there physically is not enough electricity in the state to power these facilities. They didn't account for it, especially in these towns where they're taking over old mill buildings and having to pull that amount of electricity over isn't working. So you end up getting a huge credit from the electrical company when you use natural gas instead. And what that does is the V8 engine will either turn a chiller, which will provide your HVAC and dehumidification, and then the heat from the engine will provide your boiling water. And then you could also take that engine and you turn a generator, which will make your electricity as well.
And it's a really big issue here because, even in some parts of our state, they can't even get enough power into that part of the state.
Correct.
Never mind the issue of the cost of energy. And what else? So that's a really big advantage. What other type of advantages do you offer to reduce cost of energy?
We have different distributors that we use that have highly efficient light bulbs, very efficient LEDs that use different spectrums, not just full spectrums. You can adjust the intensity of them. There's also ways to be able to turn the rooms on certain period cycles that get adjusted with your BMS system. There's lots of ways that we can help mitigate that when you're using your energy in a certain period of time.
And that's a very important thing because the issue is your lights, if you don't do it appropriately, can create heat, which causes you to use more AC. And so
Correct.
It's really important to understand lighting.
Yes.
And I would imagine there's another layer of that as well. These are 24-hour facilities, so building automation must be a big factor that's built in as well. They probably don't have somebody tending to the facility 24 hours a day, but you want to make sure the plants are growing when nobody's there.
Correct, yes.
So monitoring systems and there must be tons of technology built into these facilities as well.
It's somewhat sad in the sense when you think about it, the normal growing of a plant, they actually keep the plants in the dark so they don't go through their normal growing cycles.
okay.
In a sense, it's like, wait a minute, I'm not getting half of my fun that I usually have in the daytime. How do you think? I don't know how to put this. Is it your immigrant status that as to why? How did you decide? Because a lot of construction businesses should think about this, but you actually came into it right away. Is it because of coming here, realizing, hey, look, I got to be different than somebody else? Or?
Absolutely. And coming from Ireland, a very small country, I don't even think it's the size of Massachusetts, to be quite honest. You see the opportunities much faster and clearer than the people that have lived here all their lives. And it was just a matter of, okay, you know what, I need to get down to Colorado. I need to see what's going on. And then I met another like-minded Irishman, but he just wasn't following through on what I was following through. He was married with 2 kids. I wasn't, so I was going wherever, and I could see it happening. It was as plain as day to me what was going to happen. And then sure, as the state started going, I was like, wow, this is really happening. I really need to focus my company. I think I was in America. I had actually planned I was going to be here. I'd been over several times before to make sure everything was in place. And I actually started my first business whenever I got to America within the first week of moving.
Hit the ground running.
Hit the ground running. That was the
with
plan.
a pick and shovel?
Pretty much. That's there was only 2 of us that started the company back then, and it's grown from there.
Now, do you guys, and something that's often not talked about in construction management, are you guys self-perform, or do you manage the construction project?
No,
more so?
we self-perform, I would say about 80%. The only thing we don't do is heavy mechanical, which is such a specialised industry. That's cast iron pipes, maybe 10 inches and above. We don't do sprinklers. We don't do fire alarm. That's pretty much it. Everything else we have in-house from excavation right through to the roof.
Oh, wonderful.
Electricians,
So really a
plumbers.
turnkey solution for ground up.
Absolutely, and it also helps us to offer our customers that extra benefit of, like, we're in charge. Your subcontractors, so like there's a whole culture at the minute where the change orders are totally out of hand in these
Right.
these
Because everybody
buildings.
bids low and puts in change orders,
So
right?
so what type of bidding? Are you doing it just pure bidding process, see them at risk, or design builder?
We do absolutely everything. Like if we can get in front of the client is our best way of going about this. We'll definitely give a budget for sure, and we'll tell them straight away that whoever's bidding against is going to be at least $2 million lower than us, because they know that you give an incomplete set of plans. You're open wide for change orders. We're trying to mitigate that by saying we don't charge for the change orders. It's a change to the project. So at that point, we'll lock in and say, listen, we have our own people. There'll be no markups in anything. If you give us a change order, it's straight time and material, and we back it up.
So it's almost like a see them at risk type of thing.
Yes.
Here's our price versus someone comes in low bid. Well, all of a sudden it turns up to be either it's above your price or it's an inferior product.
We've seen change orders and subcontractors that have exceeded the original quote of the job they were actually hired to do in the first place, and closed down a couple of these things, unfortunately.
Buyer beware.
Yeah. So we do a great deal. We're big proponents of full transparency. So if they hire us, what we'll do is, like, on your project, you have full access to our books. You see every single piece of material that we'll buy. You see everything, the invoice. You'll see every hour that any of our guys have logged. We'll hand all that over, not a problem.
Now, what would you advise, a construction company looking to get into this business? Because one of the things you find is the ancillary businesses are just, if not more, profitable than getting in this direct marijuana business. How would you advise someone to think about getting into this business? And whether it's construction or any other type of business?
Learn. You have to understand what you're dealing with here, and it's not like anything you've ever learned before. It's not even close to a normal construction company. It's not even close to commercial construction anymore. And then you have the CCC involved. Whenever we first built one of the first ones in Massachusetts, nobody knew what. The inspectors were telling us, we don't know how to inspect you guys. Well, if you don't,
They
we
didn't have an
don't.
architect on board.
Yeah.
You knew more than they did.
Yeah, and so they were like, okay, and then the CCC would come in and they would throw us curveballs, and we would go back to the town and say, well, this, and then, we'll have to go to the fire department. The fire department would come in and they're scratching their head, and we're all looking at each other trying to work out how this is going to go, and then the fire department will say, well, okay, this is great, now we've all agreed we have to get the state in. And then, so
So you guys have navigated that whole process
Yes.
and understand it.
we have a great relationship with everybody now, and one of our first ports of calls and the next facility we go to is straight into the building department to meet them, because we're going to get to know you guys really well, because we pretty much every other day we're down there.
And it's also good because when you walk into a building department, they can call another community and say, look, what about these guys? And
Absolutely.
your reputation precedes yourself when you go in, and that really helps.
Absolutely, we'll hand over a list of towns that we've worked with already. Yeah, it all works.
Fascinating stuff. How many states are you currently building in?
We're looking in 3 at the minute.
At the
Florida.
minute.
At the minute. At the
Subject to
minute.
change by this afternoon.
Yeah. This industry changes by the hour. So, like Chris, he'll tell you, we'll get a call at 9 o'clock in the morning. If we don't respond to that call by lunchtime, that particular project or job could be gone. And it's always an opportunity. We see everything as an opportunity. You never know who you're meeting out there, and one little chat can turn into millions of dollars worth of work for us. And we're prepared to go absolutely anywhere. So we're actually looking at Maryland and all that as well.
Chris is everywhere.
He is.
Pretty much, yeah.
He does what we can't do. We're too old for it now.
Excellent stuff. Our guests on In the Weeds have been Eamonn O'Kane, CEO of Valiant America, and Chris Tenaglia. It's been a pleasure having you guys on. Wish you continued success in the endeavors, and keep on building, keep on growing.
Thank you very much.
Excellent.